Hello and welcome to Mabina TV. So for now, you heard that the flamboyant presenter Eric Latiff is leaving Spice FM for Nation FM. So Eric Latiff, of course, if you've not known Eric Latiff, then you heard him from the Situation Room. That is the flagship program of Spice FM. Of course, he was brought as a counterweight to Maina Kageni and Churchill. I think, of course, you have the morning conversation. It was popular. It was around Maina Kageni and Churchill. Of course, they talk about ratchet content. They talk about that is Maina Kageni and Churchill. They talk about relationships mostly. But of course, then Eric Latiff came along, and of course, those who wanted mature content basically tuned into Space FM. So Eric Latiff now is has quit Space FM, and of course he's headed to Nation. So basically, first of all, I think he has changed the nature of the nature of morning programs in Kenya. It is basically a talk show, and of course, maybe it was the first talk show in Kenya, that is Spice FM, a situation room. Of course, and radio is under so much pressure. I think legacy media generally, radio and TV are under so much pressure, and I think radio and TV are under so much pressure. So I think the future of radio is talk radio, basically because we can access music through streaming. I think we can access music through streaming, but then of course I think the real future of radio is in talk radio, and I think you had the situation room of Spice FM. I think they got that correct. That is the future of radio is talk radio. So of course, radio will combine with podcast, and so I think Space FM maybe the future. They shouldn't just have left it at 10 a.m. They should have become a 24-hour talk radio, because basically you can't stream music through YouTube, through Spotify. So maybe more and more people are not listening to music through radio. So of course maybe that's why urban radio is under so much strain. I think urban radio is under so much strain, and that is why you have, I think it is the rural radio that are doing well, because folks in the rural areas, maybe internet is so much expensive, and so of course they still rely on radio. But of course I think as internet becomes cheaper, then more and more people are going to switch to podcasts, are going to switch to YouTube and other videos. And I think maybe that's why the future of radio is in talk radio. And I think none has mastered talk radio more than Eric Latiff. I think he combines both commentating, and I think also he combines interviews. But I think and now he has gone. First of all, that shows, of course, Standard Media Group is struggling. The Standard Media Group, I think, is in a bit of a financial hole. If you ask me, they are losing presenters like never before. So they become and this is so unfortunate. Just a few years ago, to be employed by Standard Media Group was the hallmark of a journalist, but that's not so. You had S.K. Macharia of Citizen as the founder and chairman of Royal Media. He raided KTN basically for most of his journalists, and of course, they ended up making Citizen TV combine about 70% market share of prime time television. And of course, now Standard Media is in a lot of hole. I think employees are going for months without salaries, and maybe the issue of Eric Latiff leaving is all about not being paid maybe enough money, and also not just not being paid enough money, but that money is not coming in at the right time. There are delays in payment. Of course, the Mombasa Road Press Standard Media Group maybe needs to do more in order to hold on to its talent. Of course, HR professionals say that basically that is you can only be as great as your people. You can only be as great as your employees. So basically, for Standard Media Group, how does it aim to be able to match up with the likes of Royal Media when it is not paying salary? So when Eric Latiff leaves for leaves for Nation FM, then you can be sure that Nation FM is going to resuscitate its flagship FM station. Remember, Nation FM was closed for some time between 2016 and I think 2020. I think it only opened a few years ago. It was closed between 2016 and I think by the then CEO Gitagama, but I think because it was not attracting audiences, so they were losing audiences to Classic FM through Maina Kageni and Mwalimu Kingangi. And I think for Eric Latiff, he has mastered the art of interviewing. So basically, he appeals to middle class Kenyans who basically are not in tune with the Classic 105 morning program. Of course, you also have Jeff Koinange in Hot 96, and of course, I think it will be a three-way split in that market between Jeff Koinange, basically Hot 96, then Maina Kageni, and I think Mwalimu Kingangi on those who want some ratchet content on relationships, and of course, then you will have Eric Latiff now trying to resuscitate the fortunes of that is Nation FM. Remember, I think Nation Media Group still has not managed to replicate the success of Nation newspaper to TV and radio. I think they have not been able to do that. I think they got it right sometime with Nation TV, but remember also NTV is not making much money. So I think they are forced to rely on Nation newspaper. But remember, newspapers are also going. Basically, they are going. Newspapers are going. Basically, the dinosaurs way. So you will have and basically Nation FM also. I think Nation Media Group also has to know on how it will be able to cope with new media. I think the future is digital. The future is new media, and how do they basically how do this legacy media, mainstream media, how do they cope with this new media where people, the generation, the Gen Zs, the Gen Zs basically they are consuming content on social media. So basically, they are not watching news, they are not reading newspapers. So how do you tap onto them? Of course, that is going to be a major problem if that is they are going to survive. What's the business model of these newspapers? And I think they will have to embrace new ways of delivering their content. And I think that's why then you have people, some influential people on their own, they have much more leeway. Look at the likes of Amerix, look at the likes of Maverick Kaoko, look at the likes of other YouTubers. Look at Obinna basically delivering content and doing as much as TV stations could do. So I think it's a perilous time for the mainstream media. I think it's a perilous time for the mainstream media. They could go the dinosaurs way. Look at new media, and I think, of course, you have advertising. Advertising is moving online, so basically, the advertising cake is getting squeezed more and more. You have this that is advertising agencies now they are dedicating a bigger portion of their budgets to digital ads, and I think that's how legacy media is losing out. I think you had Robert Alai basically asking that. I think you had Robert Alai saying that basically they should be banned, that is advertising on digital media in Kenya should be banned so that the legacy media can get some advertising. But how do you enforce that? How do you enforce legacy media to be able to get advertising from? How do you enforce legacy media to be able to get advertising from? I think to be able to get advertising from. I think. Online media, and I think that's a problem of technology. So I think the future of radio is talk radio, and I think also the future of TV is in horse. Instead of having a 24-hour news program, maybe why doesn't KTN have a talk show host who are able to come in for 1 hour? Maybe a move from all this thing about media being neutral. There is nothing, no neutrality in media, and maybe just hire political hosts or hosts that the people can relate to. Look at the way Citizen TV branded Jeff Koinange Live, JKA Live. Maybe that's the future of TV. Just have a lot of these talk show hosts, so people will not be watching for the fact that it is maybe KTN or NTV, but they will be watching based on the host that is there. Maybe move away from news. You had K24. I think K24 was the first 24 programming, 24 programming television in Kenya, but it backfired. Now they had to scale back. I think by Roski mother, she had to sell the network to Media Max. Kenyatta owned family owned Media Max, but of course, I think now Eric Latiff leaving Space FM. First of all, that shows Standard Media Group is a is in real financial trouble. I think it is Standard newspaper that is sustaining the whole stable. Then, of course, I think Eric Latiff on his own. I think he's doing interviews, but I think he should be mixing that with also commentating. Look at America Talk Radio; they are able to adapt. Look at I think the leading podcasters in Kenya are having more influence than the TV stations, and I think that is why. Then for Eric Latiff, I think he will regain the morning ratings for N Nation FM will go up, but I think they need to make it 24 hours because I think we get our music online. So I think Eric Latiff will revive the fortunes of Nation FM, but that is not just that is not just if Nation FM relies on Eric Latiff alone. I don't think they will be able to they will be able to resuscitate their fortunes. Just make it a 24-hour talk show radio. Make it a talk show radio where basically it is just all talk throughout because the stuff on relationships, I don't think you can beat Maina Kageni and Mwalimu Kingangi on morning radio. And I think, of course, now you don't just have Maina Kageni on classic, you also have Mike Mondo coming along. So even if you poach Maina Kageni, of course, there will be Mike Mondo coming to replace him. So that's just the future of the future of. I think legacy media is up in stake. The future of mainstream media, and of course, then that is just the way this media how they should adapt. They should adapt to maybe that is online media that is coming along. You have YouTube, you have X, you have Facebook, and all these social media. So independent journalists, independent commentators are now having more leeway over the legacy media, and I think that's why. And I think even for international ones, look at Joe Rogan, the podcast. Joe Rogan has about an audience of about 11 million, and he is basically on his own. He is competing against the likes of CNN, and I think it's not just a Kenyan problem. This is a even the Western media, American media stations are facing competition from I think from social media. Look at Joe Rogan, look at Cole Hadadi podcast, look at all of them, look at the ratings for CNN, they have plummeted. So basically, I think you have Fox News, but of course, Fox News is basically a Trump station. So I think that legacy of neutrality in media is gone. That is, on the one hand, you have this, on the other hand, you have this, and then try and reach some form of compromise. That is gone, and now I think it will just be shooting straight from the hip, basically saying, this is my position, this is my take, and then just shooting from the hip. So, what do you think about Eric Latiff moving to Nation FM? Of course, that is the talk of that is a career move, and I think Standard Media Group, if it doesn't do anything, then it will fall under. So, I think why don't they pay better salaries so that then the employees can at least revive the station? But I think the layoffs are going to is not just a Kenyan thing. Even the Los Angeles Times, I think you had it laying off about staff of 200. I think CNN also had mass layoffs. And I think social media, new media is really that is new media is really killing off this traditional media. So, do you think Eric Latiff will improve the fortunes of Nation FM? And what do you think is the future of radio? Do you think radio is dead? So, you let me know in the comment section.